Hello, and welcome to the Rejuvenation Roundup podcast, where we explore the latest in life extension and anti-aging science with a dive into a month's worth of insights and new breakthroughs. This podcast is a combined effort of the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation, which operates Lifespan.io, and Future Grind, a podcast that explores the ethics and implications of emerging science and technology. I'm Ryan O'Shea, and I'll be your host. We've reached the end of March, and it's time to look back at the recent developments in longevity science. So let's get started. Remember, to find out more about any of these topics, you can visit lifespan.io/roundup. As of the recording of this podcast, nearly the entire Lifespan.io team is attending the Undoing Aging Conference in Berlin. This is the second installment of the largest aging and rejuvenation research conference in Europe. The conference is hosting talks on topics ranging from cellular senescence to epigenetic reprogramming, and from cell therapy to clinical translation. And we have some brand new audio from the conference to share with you today. First up, we have Dr. Aubrey de Grey, whose SENS Research Foundation is hosting the conference alongside the Forever Healthy Foundation to provide some updates on SENS and to speak to the success of the conference.
SENS Research Foundation has carried on plugging away, and we have benefited certainly quite a lot from the spike in cryptocurrency value that happened a year and a half ago almost now, which led to a number of large donations. We got a total of $6.5 million given to us over a period of about 3 weeks. And we are being cautious in how rapidly we spend that because we are not sure it's going to happen again. But it still has meant that we have been able to start a couple of new projects and expand our education initiative and so on. So we're pretty happy about how that's going. The idea of comprehensive damage repair as a way to really bring aging under proper medical control and keep people useful much later in life has now become completely mainstream. It's been kind of reinvented by various groups over the past few years, so that now it's kind of become the orthodox way of thinking. And moreover, the progress that's been made in the laboratory by, of course, us in various of our projects and also by other people has got to the point where these projects have become investable. They've got to the point where people, perhaps not every investor, but at least the more visionary investors who are comfortable with high risk, high reward activities, are getting in there. They're seeing how to join the dots as a value proposition. And the result is that we've so far, over the past few years, been able to spin out half a dozen of our projects into startup companies. And aligned with us, in parallel with us, there's dozens and dozens more companies coming along literally once a week now. It's ridiculous how rapidly, that are doing stuff that is very much rejuvenation, very much damage repair. Better than that, the reason it's happening is because the investment money is there. Investors are coming along and proving to be willing to write respectable sized checks to actually keep this work going, and investors are coming to us as well, and me in particular, of course, as the kind of, the spiritual leader of this field, asking, for investment advice and investment opportunities. Of course, I don't tell them about the business side of things because I don't know anything about that, but I can certainly help to guide people to the right kind of science that might be of interest to them. And I've been doing that extensively over the past couple of years, and it has had great results. So I'm extremely happy about the overall state of the Sense Nation, so to speak, and certainly we're not done yet, but I can foresee a point, maybe only 3 or 4 years from now, where Sense Research Foundation can more or less declare victory and just become an organization focused on outreach and education, because all the actual research is being done very capably by other groups with private sector money. It's a point which I always hoped we would get to, but honestly it's happened a lot more suddenly than I ever anticipated. I think the best news at the level of Sense Research Foundation is that the most challenging, the most difficult components of sense are now beginning to yield. Then we're really now seeing very significant dramatic progress, albeit still early stage, but going much faster than it was even a couple of years ago. And the ones that are slightly less hard, like for example the removal of molecular waste products inside cells, those things have gone far enough that they have become spin-out companies. So we've got two companies created that way. We've got a company that's looking at the extracellular stiffening problem, at restoring elasticity. We've got a company looking at death-resistant cells, cells that are getting into a senescent state. So this is all going amazingly well. And that's in addition to the continuing progress that's happening on the easiest things that we never really used to work on ever because they were already being worked on quite capably by other people. So I'm thinking especially of cell loss with stem cell therapy. Everything's going well, but the most difficult things, in which I would include especially mitochondrial mutations, we're now undisputedly the world leaders in these areas. These are lines of research that everyone had totally given up on to the point of being really certain that they were completely impossible and would never make progress. And we just had the persistence to do enough to get there. It really is a great example of how the short-termism that is imposed upon scientists by the system of science funding that exists worldwide has had enormously damaging effects in stopping people from working on the most valuable work and forcing them to work on low-hanging fruit that doesn't scale. And of course, the main thing that I've got to say about this particular conference that blows my mind is the sheer number of people that are here. We may be just hitting that point where it's takeoff time, because last year, this is the first time that the Berlin conference happened, first one in Europe for 5 years, since my last conference in 2013 in Cambridge, and it was big. It was 300 people. That's on the high side. I was thinking this year they'll do really well to keep it at 300 people. And we sold out, which is 500 people. We literally were not allowed to bring any more people in because of the size of the venue and the fire regulations and so on. And of course, the people here, the local organizers from Forever Health, have played an enormous part in making that happen, no question. They have worked really hard and they're fantastically capable people. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's enough. I think you're only going to get this when the beginning is really happening, the beginning of the end, so to speak, or at least the end of the beginning, as Churchill put it, right? We're going to actually have a bigger venue next year because we expect that it's going to be bigger. And to be honest, it's going to be maybe 20 or 30% bigger than this year, the venue, and that may very well not be enough. It's going to be pretty interesting.
Next, we have Dr. Kelsey Moody, the CEO of iCore Therapeutics, and Dr. Huda Solomon of Icaria Life Sciences, to discuss the work of iCore and the services they provide.
I'm Dr. Kelsey Moody. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of iCore Therapeutics and its portfolio of companies. iCore itself is a biopharmaceutical company that does drug discovery in the aging space, and we have a variety of portfolio companies, each of which are designed to target a different type of age-associated damage, and through these companies we're developing classes of different drugs to move into the clinic for conventional therapeutic applications, as well as hopefully more anti-aging targeted therapies as well.
I'm Dr. Huda Solomon. I am president of Icaria Life Sciences, one of the portfolio companies of iCore, which is a dedicated contract research organization that uses the technologies developed by iCore to help others advance the aging space.
One of the challenges in the aging space is that the kind of underlying discovery work that usually drives translational pipelines is really lacking because the space is just so new. So if you're looking at molecular targets of cardiovascular disease or cancer, things like that, a lot of these targets have been thoroughly vetted by academic institutions in the peer-reviewed literature, and you have some level of confidence that the thing that you're going after is actually an appropriate target. But because the aging space is so new, there's lots of new targets that are being discovered, but there hasn't really been enough time for for academia to properly vet those targets. So some of them are very good real targets that we should be going after, and others are artifacts and might not actually actually be real or as impactful as we think. And so at iCore, we started doing a while ago a lot of contract work to try to help other companies that need to bring industrial grade rigor to basic science and to early discovery, and then move from that early stage discovery work into full-on development programs, which are more akin to a traditional pharmaceutical pipeline. That contract work has grown. We've helped a lot of companies, worked with a lot of clients, and we've kind of run into a need to have dedicated teams for project management and really making sure that all of the client projects get plugged into the pipeline, to get our best efforts and everything else. And that's where Huda's coming in and spinning out all of our contract research into Acaria Life Sciences.
We have the setup, but we also have the expertise, so we can help those that are not familiar with the types of research that we do, help them design their studies, and also give them the resources to get the data that they're looking for.
Especially initially, iCore is going to be doing all of the back-end work for Acaria. So even though Acaria will be managing client relations and helping to do study design and things like that, the technicians that are actually doing the work and all of the assays that are being performed and so on will be done by iCore staff. By separating the companies, though, this gives Acaria the ability to grow independently, particularly when it comes to project design. So the needs for program directors and study directors to assist clients with designing their studies and making sure that they meet the appropriate endpoints and things like that. We have teams that do that for our own intramural work, and by splitting out Icaria, we can build teams that can do that in a way that is more catered to client work. So having that separation gives a lot of flexibility for Huda and her team to really provide what we hope will be a great client experience, but with iCore's level of rigor on the back end. So we recently scaled to about 50 employees, which are almost exclusively bench scientists or technicians of one flavor or another. In July, we'll have completed construction on our new husbandry facility, which will allow us to do large animal, everything except non-human primate we'll be able to do in-house. And we're also planning to offer GLP capabilities as well, which is essential for any translational program.
And finally, for this round of interviews, we have Dr. Judith Campisi of the Buck Institute for Research on Aging to discuss the types of ailments that may potentially be treated with senolytics, the work to move from mouse models to human trials, and efforts to tackle cancer.
Well, if you believe a mouse can predict what happens in a human, it's an amazing array of age-related diseases, everything from neurodegeneration to late-life cancer. So I think if we're correct and the mouse models are correct, they're going to be a huge array of age-related diseases, everything from the brain to your kidneys, to your joints, to your heart. For example, in my lab, we always start with human cells, and then we look at mouse cells, and then if those two cell types behave the same way, then we look at the mouse. So we can hope to extrapolate to humans. But in fact, it's still very early days, and as you know, the first senolytic drugs have just entered clinical trials for humans, so we have a ways to go. Think about what a cancer cell needs to do to survive. It needs to avoid death. And we know that senescent cells are also somewhat stable. They usually use the same mechanisms to avoid cell death so that they're stable in the body. Now, the difference between cancer and a senescent cell, a cancer cell and a senescent cell, is if you want to cure cancer, you have to kill every cancer cell, because one cancer cell can go on and form a tumor. That's not the case in the case of senescent cells. In the mouse models, we kill maybe between 60 and 80% of the senescent cell, and there's already improvement in health span. So it's a different threshold between cancer and senescence, and those anti-cancer drugs failed because of the very, very high bar that's needed to eradicate cancer. For some of these compounds, the act of killing senescent cells looks pretty good. For others, it looks more like these compounds might suppress the the SASP, the secretory phenotype. The advantage of killing a senescent cell is that it's gone for some period of time until those senescent cells can build up again. Whereas if you suppress the SASP, as soon as you take away the compound, the cells start secreting again. I do want to point out, though, that I think where the research needs to go is to really understand the heterogeneity among senescent cells. It may be that we don't need as much of a cocktail if the damaging senescent cells have something in common. But as you know, there are good things that senescent cells do as well, and we don't want to eliminate those good cells. So right now there's a big push in the field, certainly in my lab, but many other labs, to understand the heterogeneity so that the drugs can be more specific. Eventually there probably might be a cocktail, and even then we're going to have to exercise a little bit of caution, right? You don't want to take a senolytic before you go to surgery. We don't know whether senescent cells are made at a higher rate in older individuals, whether they're cleared at a slower rate due to the immune system not catching up, or some combination of both. And it could easily be some combination of both. We're also just beginning to understand how the immune system identifies and targets these cells, and how those senescent cells can also evolve mechanisms, much like cancer cells, to avoid the immune system. So these are very early days, and the whole immune component is something that we need to understand much better. For example, some patients on immunotherapy for cancer are developing type 1 diabetes. So, you know, the immune system is this very finely tuned system, and we don't know as much about the immune system as we should. I would be very cautious about tweaking the immune system one way or the other.
That's all of our interviews from this month's Research Roundup, but come back next month when we'll have even more to share with you. How would you like to join fellow life extensionists in reading and discussing the best titles related to life extension and all things future? We think that's a great idea, and that's why we're putting together the Longevity Book Club as yet another nice perk for our lifespan heroes, the ones supporting our mission with monthly financial contributions. The first book we'll read together is Yuval Noah Harari's Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. We hope you'll join us. On March 21st, Leaf's Elena Milova took part in a roundtable discussion titled At the Edge of Two Professions, The Ethics of Doctors and Medical Journalists. Elena also noted that scientific and medical news can affect how people make decisions about health, thus affecting their lifestyles and compliance with sound medical advice. Therefore, it is crucial that journalists prefer scientific data over unscientific opinions. The roundtable was organized by the local Media Institute for Public Health and was attended by experts from UNESCO and the Ministry of Health, representatives from the Russian Union of Journalists, professors of journalism, and representatives of patient organizations. This roundtable was an initial step in the preparation of the ethical code of the medical journalist. And now for our research roundup. Epigenetic alterations, one of the hallmarks of aging, are changes in the states of genetic switches in our DNA, and they are increasingly being linked to aging and degenerative age-related diseases. A new publication by Dr. David Sinclair and Dr. Alice Kane, both from Harvard Medical School, reviews the role of epigenetic alterations in aging. It is becoming clear that epigenetic alterations play a key role in aging and that they are amenable to interventions such as reprogramming. Stem cells are non-specialized cells that, by means of division and specialization, end up forming all of the tissues of your body. Researchers at the University of Luxembourg have found a way to rejuvenate the stem cells of elderly mice and improve brain function. Their results pave the way for stem cell therapies that may help to repair brain damage from strokes or neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. As we age, our immune systems steadily decline, becoming less efficient and more inclined to contribute to chronic inflammation due to inappropriate activation. There is little doubt that the immune system plays a key role in longevity. And fully understanding why it breaks down and the ways in which we can repair and improve it are critically important to the mission to end age-related diseases. A new study published in the journal Biogerontology examines the convergence of longevity and immunity. You may be familiar with the concept of pleiotropy, which occurs when a single gene affects more than one distinct and seemingly unrelated trait. It is known as antagonistic pleiotropy when at least one of these traits is harmful. It has been suggested that this antagonistic pleiotropy is the result of humans evolving genes which focused on making reproduction possible earlier in life, even though it resulted in senescence in later life. Studies and discussion of antagonistic pleiotropy are currently ongoing. Remember, to find out more about anything mentioned in our research roundup, you can visit lifespan.io/roundup. And now for some news nuggets. Autophagy is a well-known mechanism that is employed by cells to recycle broken proteins and organelles into reusable components, and it is known to positively influence longevity. Samsara is a new biotech startup that focuses on the development of therapies that boost this built-in longevity mechanism. Life Biosciences, an aging research company co-founded in 2017 by Dr. David Sinclair, announced earlier this month that it appointed Dr. Mahmood Khan, former vice chairman and chief scientific officer of PepsiCo, as its new CEO. We recently released a few snippets from our first webinar, which was held in late January this year. The webinar featured members of the SENS Research Foundation's MitoSENS team working on addressing mitochondrial dysfunction via allotopic expression. During the webinar, Dr. Aubrey de Grey adjusted his estimate of when robust mouse rejuvenation will be achieved. Check out the teasers to find out more. Engine, that's ENJIN, is an online gaming community platform and cryptocurrency that is partnering with the SENS Research Foundation to facilitate fundraising through the gamification of the donation process. Engine's goal is to change the way that people and charities interact in order to make fundraising a more enjoyable experience for donors. Last year, Restore Bio's immune system boosting drug targeting the mTOR pathway was shown to have positive effects in a Phase 2b human trial, and now the company is moving on to Phase 3 trials. More on the news nuggets is available at lifespan.io/roundup. Coming up next month, we're going to host a second webinar, which will be focused on the role of the gut microbiome in aging. It's becoming increasingly clear that your gut bacteria don't just help you better digest food, they seem to play an important role in aging, possibly even contributing to chronic inflammation later in life. Dr. Mike Lustgarten, Dr. Amy Prohl, and Dr. Cosmo Milka will be discussing this fascinating topic on April 8th, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All of our amazing supporters, the Lifespan Heroes, are entitled and encouraged to join the session to learn all about the human microbiome and ask questions of the experts. That's it for this episode of the Rejuvenation Roundup podcast. Thank you very much for spending another month with us and for your help in the fight against age-related disease. Whether you're donating, spreading the word, or simply listening to our content, we appreciate your help. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and post about it on social media. This will increase our reach and introduce more people to the importance of life extension science. Don't forget, you can get additional deep dives into science, technology, and futurism on the Future Grind podcast. Find out more at futuregrind.org. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan O'Shea, and on behalf of the team at Leaf, we wanted to thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next time on the Rejuvenation Roundup podcast.